Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to join in this wonderful fellowship and this wonderful enterprise of creating Torah together by immersing ourselves in words that have been passed down to us and words that we are creating to pass on to others as well. We are in Parshat Ki Tisa in the book of Exodus, chapter 30, beginning with verse 11. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute at this point, we can join together in reciting our blessing for this moment. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deeds and relationships of Torah. We'll begin by having an opportunity for everyone to share in the reading of some verses from this week's Torah portion. And then I will share with you a little bit of a focus study based on this week's Torah portion, and then we'll open it up for our collaborative conversation. I'll begin at chapter 30 with verse 11. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "When you take a census of the Israelite people according to their enrollment, each shall pay Adonai a ransom for themselves on being enrolled. No plague may come upon them through their being enrolled. This is what everyone who is entered in the record shall pay: a half shekel by the sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs to the shekel, a half shekel as an offering to Adonai. Everyone who is entered in the records from the age of 20 years up shall give Adonai's offering. The rich shall not pay more, and the poor shall not pay less than half a shekel when giving Adonai's offering as an expiation for your persons. You shall take the expiation money from the Israelites and assign it to the service of the tent of meeting. It shall serve the Israelites as a reminder before Adonai as expiation for your persons." And Richard, would you like to read a little bit at verse 17?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it, for washing, and place it between the tent of meeting and the altar. Put water in it, and let Aaron and his sons wash their hands and feet in water drawn from it. When they enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water, that they may not die, or when they serve to turn into smoke and offering by fire to the Lord, they shall wash their hands and feet. That they may not die. It shall be a law for all time for them, for him and his offspring throughout the generations."
Thank you. Joni, would you like to read a little bit beginning at verse 22?
Thank you. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Next, take choice spices, 500 weight of solidified myrrh, half as much, 250 of fragrant cinnamon, 250 of aromatic cane, 500 by the sanctuary weight of cassia, and a hin of olive oil. Make of this a sacred anointing oil, a compound of ingredients expertly blended to serve as a sacred anointing oil. With it, anoint the tent of meeting, the ark of the pact, the table and all its utensils, the lampstand and all its fittings, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and its stand. Thus you shall consecrate them so that they may be most holy. Whatever touches them shall be consecrated. You shall also anoint Aaron and his sons, consecrating them to serve me as priests."
Thank you. Anna, would you like to read at verse 31?
"And speak to the Israelite people as follows. This shall be an anointing oil sacred to me throughout the ages. It must not be rubbed on any person's body, and you must not make anything like it in the same proportions. It is sacred, to be held as sacred by you. Whoever compounds its like or puts any of it on a layperson shall be cut off from his kin."
Thank you very much. And Dave Leb, would you like to read starting at verse 34?
And Adonai said to Moses, "Take the herbs how do you pronounce that?
Stakte?
Sate, anche, and galbanum, these herbs together with pure frankincense, and let there be equal parts of each. Make them into incense, a compound expertly blended, refined, pure, sacred. Beat some of it into powder and put some before the pact in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you. It shall be most holy to you. But when you make this incense, you must not make any in the same proportions for yourselves. It shall be held by you, sacred to Adonai. Any party who makes any like it, to smell of it, shall be cut off from his kin.
Thank you very much. Mark Thompson, would you like to read at the start of chapter 31?
Yes, thank you. Adonai spoke to Moses, "See, I have singled out by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. I have endowed him with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft, to make designs for work in gold, silver, and copper, to cut stones for setting and to carve wood, to work in every kind of craft. Moreover, I have assigned to him Oholiab, son of Ahishamach, of the tribe of Dan. And I've also granted skill to all who are skillful, that they may make everything that I have commanded you, the tent of meeting, the ark for the pact, and the cover upon it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and the utensils, the pure lampstand and all its fittings, and the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils, and the laver and the stand, the service vestments, the sacral vestments of Aaron the priest, and the vestments of his son for their service as priests, as well as the anointing oil and the aromatic incense for the sanctuary, just as I have commanded you, they shall do."
Thank you so much. June, would you like to read starting at verse 12 of chapter 31?
Thank you, Rabbi. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily ye shall keep my Sabbath, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord who sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that profaneth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that so shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he ceased from work and rested. Do you want me to continue?
Please, yes.
And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of speaking with him upon Mount Sinai, the 2 tables of the testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God.
Thank you so much, June. Steve, would you like to read at the very start of chapter 32?
Wasn't sure if you had the other Steve there. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that fellow Moses, the envoy who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Aaron said, "You men, take off the gold rings that are on your ears, on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." And all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. This he took from them and cast into a mold, and made it into a molten calf. And they exclaimed, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, "Tomorrow shall be a festival for the Eternal." Early next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being, They sat down to eat and drink, and then rose to dance.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
And David and Susan, would you like to read beginning at verse 7 of chapter 32?
Yes, thank you very much. And the Lord said to Moses, quick, go down, for your people that you brought up from Egypt has acted ruinously. They have swerved quickly from the way that I charged them. They have made them a molten calf and bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I see this people, and look, it is a stiff-necked people. And now leave me be, that my wrath may flare against them, and I will put an end to them, and I will make you a great nation.
And Moses conciliated in front of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, his God, and said, why, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, should your anger flare at your people whom you brought out from the land of Egypt with big power and a strong hand? Why should Egypt saying, he brought them out for bad, to kill them in the mountains and to finish them off from the face of the earth? Turn back from your flaring anger and relent about the bad your people, and relent about the bad from your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, that you swore to him by yourself when you spoke to them. And you said, I'll multiply your seed like the stars of the skies, and I'll give your seed all this land that I've said, and they'll possess it forever. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh relented about the bad that he had spoken to do to his people.
Thank you so much. Jim, would you like to read beginning at verse 15?
Thank you, Rabbi. Thereupon Moses turned and went down from the mountain bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, tablets inscribed on both their surfaces. They were inscribed on the one side and on the other. The tablets were God's work and the writing of God's writing. Writing incised upon the tablets. When Joshua heard the sound of the people in its boisterousness, he said to Moses, there is a cry of war in the camp. But he answered, it is not the sound of the tune of triumph or the sound of the tune of defeat. It is the sound of song that I hear.
Thank you so much, Jim. Margot, would you like to read starting at verse 19?
Yes, thank you. As soon as Moses came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged. And he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made and burned it. He ground it to powder and strewed it upon the water, and so made the Israelites drink it. Moses said to Aaron, what did this people do to you that you have brought such great sin upon them? Aaron said, let not my Lord be enraged. You know that this people is bent on evil. They said to me, make us a God to lead us. For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what happened to him. Also, so I said to them, whoever has gold, take it off. They gave it to me, and I hurled it into the fire, and out came the calf.
Thank you so much, Margot. Martine, would you like to read starting at verse 25?
Thank you, Rabbi. Moses saw that the people were out of control, since Aaron had let them get out of control, so that they were a menace to any who might oppose them. Moses stood up in the gate of the camp and said, whoever is for Adonai, come here. And all of the men of Levi rallied to him. He said to them, thus says Adonai, the God of Israel, each of you put sword on thigh, go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay sibling, neighbor, and kin. The men of Levi did as Moses had bidden, and some 3,000 of the people fell that day. And Moses said, dedicate yourself to Adonai this day, for each of you has been against blood relations, that God may bestow a blessing upon you today.
Thank you so much, Martin. Let me invite Robert. Would you like to read starting at verse 30?
Yes, thank you. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, Ye have sinned a great sin. And now I will go up unto the Lord. Peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Oh, this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. And yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Therefore now go, lead the people unto the place of which I have spoken unto thee. Behold, mine angel shall go before thee. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them. And the Lord plagued the people because they made the calf which Aaron made.
Thank you, Robert. And Mark Levinstein, would you like to read at the start of chapter 33?
Please, thank you. Excuse me. Then the Lord said to Moses, Set out from here, you and the people that you have brought up from the land of Egypt, the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, To your offspring will I give it. I will send an angel before you. I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, the land flowing with milk and honey. They will not go in your midst, since you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. And the people heard this harsh word, they went into mourning, and none put on his finery. The Lord said to Moses, Say to the Israelite people, you are a stiff-necked people. If I were to go in your midst for one moment, I would destroy you. Now then, leave off your finery, and I will consider what to do to you. So the Israelites remained stripped of their finery from Mount Horeb on.
Thank you. Justin, would you like to read starting at verse 7?
Thank you, Rabbi. And Moses took the tent and pitched it for himself outside the camp, distancing it from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. And it would be that anyone seeking the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. And it would be that when Moses would go out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each one at the entrance of his tent, and they would gaze after Moses until he went into the tent. And it would be that when Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and he would speak with Moses. When all the people would see the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance of the tent, all the people would rise and prostrate themselves, each one at the entrance of his tent. Then the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as a man would speak to his companion, and he would return to the camp, but his attendant Joshua, the son of Nun, a lad, would not depart from the tent.
Thank you so much, Justin. Let me invite Jay. Would you like to read a little bit beginning at verse 12?
Sure. Thank you, Rabbi. Moses said to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, See, you say to me, lead this people forward, but you have not made known to me whom you will send with me. Further, you have said, I have singled you out by name, and you have indeed gained my favor. Now, if I have truly gained your favor, pray, let me know your ways, that I may know you and continue in your favor. Consider too that this nation is your people. And he said, I will go in the lead and will lighten your burden. And he said to him, unless you go in the lead, do not make us leave this place. For how shall it be known that your people have gained your favor unless you go with us, so that we may be distinguished, your people and I, from every people on the face of the earth?
Thank you, Jay. Let me invite Catherine. Would you like to read starting at verse 17 of chapter 33 rather?
Thank you, Rabbi.
And the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing that you have asked, for you have truly gained my favor, and I have singled you out by name. He said, oh, let me behold your presence. I'll make all my goodness before you, and I will proclaim before you the name I, Lord, and the grace that I grant, and the companion that I chose. But he said, you cannot see my face, for man may not see me and live. And Lord said, see, there is a place near me. Station yourself on the rock. And as my presence passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and shield you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We're at the beginning of chapter 34 now. And Adonai said to Moses, carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you shattered. Be ready by morning, and in the morning come up to Mount Sinai and present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. No one else shall come up with you, and no one else shall be seen anywhere on the mountain, neither shall the flocks and the herds graze at the foot of this mountain. Richard, would you like to read starting at verse 4?
Thank you, Rabbi. So Moses carved 2 tablets of stone like the first, and early in the morning he went up to Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him, taking the 2 stone tablets with him. The Lord came down in a cloud. He stood with him there and proclaimed the name Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, rich in steadfast kindness, extending kindness to the 1000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet he does not remit all punishment, but visits the iniquity of fathers upon children and children's children upon the 3rd and 4th generations. Moses hastened to bow low to the ground in homage and said, if I have gained your favor, O Lord, pray, let the Lord go in our midst. Stiff-necked though his people be, pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your own. He said, I hereby make a covenant before all your people. I will work such wonders as have not been wrought on all the earth or in any nation, and all the people who are with you shall see how awesome are the Lord's deeds, which I will perform for you. Mark well what I command you this day. I will drive out before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Beware of making a covenant with the inhabitants of the land against which you are advancing, lest they be a snare in your midst. No, you must tear down their altars, smash their pillars, and cut down their sacred posts. For you must not worship any other God, because the Lord, whose name is impassioned, is an impassioned God. You must not make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, for they will lust after their gods and sacrifice to their gods and invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you take wives from among their daughters for your sons, their daughters will lust after their gods and will cause your sons to lust after their gods.
Thank you, Richard. Joni, want to read a little bit starting at verse 17?
Thank you. You shall not make molten gods for yourselves. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, eating unleavened bread for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time of the month of Abib. For in the month of Abib you went forth from Egypt. Every first issue of the womb is mine. From all your livestock that drop a male as firstling, whether cattle or sheep. But the firstling of an ass you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck, and you must redeem every firstborn among your sons. None shall appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall work, but on the seventh day you shall cease from labor. You shall cease from labor even at plowing time and at harvest time.
Thank you, Joe. Let me invite Anna, do you want to read it?
You
Verse
shall
22.
observe the Feast of Weeks of the first fruits of the wheat harvest and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the sovereign, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations from your path and enlarge your territory. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before your God 3 times a year. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, and the sacrifice of the Feast of Passover shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. And Adonai said to Moses, write down these commandments, for in accordance with these commandments, I will make a covenant with you and with Israel.
Go ahead.
And Adonai said to Moses, and he was there with Adonai 40 days and 40 nights. He ate no bread and drank no water, and he wrote down on the tablets the terms of the covenant, the 10 commandments.
Thank you so much. Mark Thompson, would you like to read starting at verse 29?
Yes. So Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as Moses came down from the mountain bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, Moses was not aware that the skin of his face was radiant, since he had spoken with Adonai. Aaron and all the Israelites saw that the skin of Moses' face was radiant, and they shrank from coming near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron, all the chieftains in the assembly returned to him, and Moses spoke to them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he instructed them concerning all that Adonai had imparted to him on Mount Sinai. And when Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. Whenever Moses went in before Adonai to speak with him, he would leave the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see how radiant the skin of Moses' face was. Moses would then put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with him.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, everyone. That's our Torah portion for the week. I'd like to share a little bit of focus study with you, and then we'll open it up for our collaborative conversation. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out so that we can follow along some of the particular verses and commentaries I'm sharing with you this evening. There's certainly a lot of rich detail and many different bits of drama that are happening in this week's Torah portion. I'd like to focus kind of on a broad sweep of what's happening in this week's Torah portion rather than just focusing on the details. I begin by looking at really what's our opening verse here. And my edition translates verse 12 through 13 of chapter 30 this way. When you take a census of the Israelites according to their enrollment, each shall pay a half shekel as an offering to Adonai. Now, the word that is rendered in my translation as take a census, yes, is really, it says Ki Tisa, which is the name of our Torah portion. And the verb tisa comes from the Hebrew verb nasa, which means to lift up or carry or take. And what its literal translation here is tisa et rosh b'nei Yisrael, when you lift up the heads of the Israelites. Or one could translate it as when you elevate the Israelites according to their enrollment. So the word nisa, from that same verb root, we get the word a nasi, for example, and a nasi is a prince. So I'm kind of intrigued by this whole notion, this physicality of an elevation that's happening here at the very beginning of our Torah portion. So here's, as I was studying the Torah portion this week, here's the kind of the broad sweep that I was seeing in the drama of the narrative. There is at the very beginning an elevation, which we've just discussed. Then there is this profound and tragic collapse, which has to do with the golden calf. There then is this moment of shattering, and there are actually two objects that are shattered. There is the golden calf that is broken apart and ground into dust. And then there's also the first set of tablets, which is also shattered. And then we come towards the end with a sense of reconstitution or reconstruction, which is exemplified by the second set of tablets. So that the broad sweep, the arc, if you will, of the narrative is this elevation, collapse, shattering, and then reconstitution. So that's the sweep I'd like to explore with this little bit of focused study. And then if you look at number 2, this is a bit of commentary from a Pikar de Rabbi Eliezer. And it says, Moses took the tablets and went down the mountain, and the letters were carrying themselves and Moses. When the letters saw the golden calf, they flew off the tablets and became heavy. Moses could no longer carry them, so he threw them out of his hands. So this beautiful bit of dramatic writing kind of describes the letters as having a life. And the letters, in fact, are carrying Moses down from the mountain. And then they see something that's so disturbing to them that they fly off the tablets. If we remember, the whole project of building the Mishkan was an enterprise designed to create an environment, an opportunity for God to dwell in this dimension. And here it seems as if these words are now being brought down from the top of Mount Sinai are not able to dwell in this dimension. They flee, they encounter something that causes them to find this dimension as being inhospitable to their presence. And when that happens, all that's left is this stony residue of this rock, this tablet, that then Moses smashes. So what is it about what's happening that made it difficult for these words, these alive, dynamic forces, which have come down from God, makes it impossible for them to find a home here? Well, we're going to look a little bit at some commentary from the great Hasidic rabbi, the Sfat Emet, who's also going to be building upon some early rabbinic playing with words, and he'll provide us some insight he has into what's going on here. So the first, before we get into the text itself, what's going to be happening in the rabbinic commentary that Sfat Emet is going to be building on, the rabbis are going to be playing with some words here. And what they're going to be playing on is the word harar, which means to become free, and another Hebrew verb, harat, which means to engrave. So here's Sfat Emet in number 3. Scripture says that the words were incised, harut, on the tablets. The rabbis comment, freedom, cherut, from the evil urge, from the angel of death, from death itself. But what does incise on the tablets really mean? Only as the light of Torah is incised on the hearts of Israel are the letters incised on the tablets as well. The real writing is on the heart, of which scripture in Proverbs says, write them on the tablet of your heart. Torah depends on the preparation of Israel, on the readiness of those who are supposed to receive Torah. If you remember, we looked at a commentary from Rashi when we were discussing the moment at Mount Sinai. And Rashi says there's actually a precondition to the people experiencing God's revelation at Mount Sinai. And that precondition was kind of an engagement with the whole story of the Israelite people that stretches all the way back to Abraham and even further back to the moment of creation. And the people re-experience the story. They re-experience a sense of how they haven't lived up to this heritage of this story that they've inherited. They grieve for their incapacity to have lived up to that great glory. And they have this moment of hungering and yearning for a reconstruction of themselves, a hungering for the word that will guide them back. And that is when, according to Rashi, God speaks at Mount Sinai. The people have, in a sense, prepared themselves through an act of, if you will, reflection, kind of a therapeutic reconstruction of themselves that makes them ready now to receive guidance in a new way. And here too, what Sfat Emet seems to be indicating is similarly, the words fled because the people weren't ready to receive them. They had not prepared them themselves as a field of possibility to receive this new way. And so the letters could not begin to enter into them. They as if it was as if they were non-existent or disappeared, evaporated. So it's interesting here what the rabbis have done in their play on this word of cherut and charut, cherut freedom and charut incised. For them, they seem to be associating this notion that the words on the tablets are expressive of a human condition called freedom. And what does freedom mean? Freedom means, according to Sfat Emet, building upon this tradition, freedom means to be free from certain compulsions, certain ethical, spiritual, emotional maladies that get in the way of our being able to receive information that will guide us in a healthy way. And in particular, what the Sfat Emet is describing is in the concluding remarks to number 3. He writes, Israel clearly had fallen into disunity before the calf was made. On the rung where they then stood, on the rung of separation, they indeed received nothing. What is this rung of separation? What is this disunity that the Sfat Emet is talking about? If you turn over onto the next page, number 4, we're going to be looking at some commentary that comes out of the Talmud, Masechet Chagiga, and we read, why are matters of Torah compared to a goad, which is what's described in Ecclesiastes? To tell you that just as a goad directs the cow to her furrow to bring forth sustenance for life to the world, so too the words of Torah direct those who study them from the paths of death to the paths of life. Just as this goad is movable and not rigid, so too matters of Torah are movable. And what is meant by movable in that sense is that the words are in accordance with the circumstances. They're not permanent. There's a sense of movement to them. And then the Talmud continues, make your ears like a funnel and acquire for yourself an understanding heart, to hear the statements of those who render objects ritually impure, and the statements of those who render them pure, the statements of those who prohibit, and the statements of those who permit, the statements of those who deem items invalid, and the statements of those who deem them valid. What these early rabbis are instructing us in is the point of learning Torah is not about deriving a single answer, but it's about developing the ability to understand multiple and even conflicting points of view with a sense of insight and compassion, and to understand that all of these points of view, even the ones that conflict, derive from a single source. And on our previous page, what the Sfat Emet seemed to be saying was the people of Israel are in disunity. In part, it's an internal conflict within each one of them because they have all these urges that are confining them, that are limiting their ability to grow and be healthy psychologically, spiritually, and emotionally, and communally. And in addition, the Sfat is saying, the Sfat Emet is saying, and these people are in disunity with one another. They have an incapacity to assimilate different points of view and to live in harmony, if you will, with different points of view. And so here we are at this moment of crisis. And in our story, what happens is Moses smashes the first set of tablets. So the question arises, why does he smash the tablets? Does he smash the tablets because he's so furious at the Israelites that they don't see this beautiful moment and this beautiful object that he's brought down from the top of Mount Sinai? Well, there's other commentary that there's some commentary that says that, and then there's other commentary that actually says, no, he was engaging in an act of solidarity with the people. And indeed, this is what the Sfat Emet is hinting at in number 5. Moses loved the whole community of Israel, even more than he loved the tablets. By this act, he joined himself to Israel. A question becomes, as we've talked in a previous session, how does one go about engaging in an act of change with others and with a community of people? Do you change people by demanding that they change? If people don't live up to your expectations of the proper course to follow, do you separate from them with a sense of indignation and of superiority? Well, the Sfat Emet says what Moses did here was he, in a sense, gave up this status of privilege that he had experienced up on the mountain and carrying forth the artifact that represented the privileged position that he held, and he smashed it. And he rejoined the people in a sense. And for him, for Sfat Emet, the way one begins to evolve is in concert with others, with a sense of identification with others, with connection with others, and most of all, perhaps with a sense of empathy and compassion. And then change becomes not a project that you're seeking to impose upon others. Change then becomes a joint project that you're also involved in. And we have, as we're heading towards the end of this bit of focused study, this moment of reconstitution, reconstruction, which is represented by the second set of tablets. And what's fascinating about the second set of tablets is that it says, and I have a typo here, it should say chapter 34, not 24. It says in chapter 34, verse 28, and he, meaning Moses, wrote down on the tablets the terms of the covenant, the 10 utterances. Commentators focus on this, and they say there's something profoundly different between the first set of tablets and the second set of tablets. The first set of tablets, it's clear from the text, was written by the hand of God. The second set of tablets, the text allows us to understand it was Moses who wrote down on the second set of tablets. The second set of tablets, unlike the first, which was an act of, if you will, of divine inscription, the second set of tablets is a work of human initiative and inscription. And that bit of human initiative becomes key towards this moment of reconstruction of the people. And it's fascinating that the very last commentary that Rashi has in the entire Torah, on the very last verse in the book of Deuteronomy, he imagines through a midrash of having God say, Yasher koach, Moses, for having shattered the tablets. Congratulations to you. It was a good thing that you did when you shattered the tablets. And one way of understanding that is God is praising Moses for understanding the only way to move forward into true freedom and into the land of promise is when people assume, when human beings assume the initiative for creating the path. And God can be an inspiration, but it requires the acceptance of initiative and responsibility by the community to create this way. With that, I would like to turn to our graphic that was on the very front. And this is a work by the artist, husband and wife, Christo and Jean-Claude. And it is the wrapping of the Arc de Triomphe, which was done in 2020. And what these two wonderful artists did throughout their career was they would sheath existing objects. Some would be human-made objects, others would be objects in nature, trees, bodies of water with huge amounts of material. And the effect that these huge environmental works have on us, they cause us to experience our everyday encounters very differently. You think you're walking through Central Park and you're familiar with all these trees, and then one day you walk through it and there are all these draperies in red over trees and across pathways. And here, what they have done is they've taken one of the most iconic monuments in all of France, the Arc de Triomphe. And the Arc de Triomphe was built by Napoleon, and it was a construction project that went on from about 1806 till 1836. And Napoleon wanted this enormous arch built to honor the great military victories of the French army in both the Revolution and in the Napoleonic Wars. But what this couple have done, what this couple has done with the wrapping in this blue and white and red, what they have done is they have caused us to re-encounter the colors of France, the red, white, and blue. And they've caused us to re-encounter this monument to military victory and to perhaps reflect on it very differently. And what's fascinating is that what Christo said about this work in particular and many of his other works, their other works, is this in number 7. Our work of art is a scream of freedom. I've always liked the comparison with nomadic tribes. They build their tents, their houses, move in the desert. Their tents are very strong because they have to resist the wind and the forces of nature. So here's this lovely connection that Christo makes between the works that they have been doing and the kinds of materials and constructions that nomads make in the wilderness. And this is what the Israelites are at this point. They are nomads in the wilderness. And we've already begun to encounter a particular structure that they made with flowing materials that moves, it gets carried with them. It doesn't stay in one spot, and that's the Mishkan. And what Christo says, he identifies freedom with this fabric, that the freedom is really constituted of the fabric of nomads. It has this capacity for movement and has this capacity to exist among the turbulence that there is in the world. And so true freedom is a human construction. It's reflective, that's reflective of the essence of the divine. So I've called this week's Torah study the Ark of Triumph, Public Art. And it's my own little play on words, because while the French name for this monument is l'Arc de Triomphe, which really means Arch of Triumph, I'm playing with the notion of an arc of triumph. And the arc of triumph that we see in this week's Torah portion is this narrative run from an elevation, a collapse, a shattering, and a reconstruction. And that reconstruction is made up of an understanding that freedom isn't something that's a gift to us. Freedom is an ongoing work of construction of self and community. And that is all done in public. That work of creating a sense of a community that exists in freedom is public art. And that is what Christo and Jean-Claude are engaged in as well. Ongoing forms of public art that provoke people to reconsider what they have always taken for granted and to recommit themselves to creating fabrics and communities of freedom. And with that, I'd love to hear what other people were inspired by, provoked by, reflecting on this week's Torah portion. And with that, if you'd like to raise your hand, I'd love to call on you. And Mark Thompson.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I'm reminded, I think many times we've discussed this theme of trying to reject rigidity of thought. And I'm seeing this in this Torah portion as well. And I was very inspired by the passage on Chagiga, make your ears like a funnel and acquire for yourself, so forth and so on. And I kept on thinking about our own society and our Supreme Court. And that our Supreme Court, to me, is, well, it's sort of like a symbol of art, because aren't we trying to, in the process of dialogue and discussion and interpretation, trying to exactly do what this Torah portion is advising us to do as well, to try to bring in different points of view and not to be stuck in these rigid forms of thinking, so that we truly can achieve freedom. And it also occurred to me that perhaps Moses wasn't quite ready himself to deliver those tablets, because the letters were so heavy for him, in a sense that he wasn't really ready. Maybe they were lighter the second time when he was able to create them on his own, because he took ownership for those letters at that point.
Oh, I like that.
That's very nice. Very nice. Thank you, Mark. And others, if you'd like to raise your hand. Jay Iser, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of observations. Number one is I recommend anyone to read Rabbi's earlier email from February 15th when you get a chance, because it goes into some of Christoph's mindset and how he considered the entire process from start to finish his work of art. Even though he was dead when this was constructed, he died in 2020, before this went up, and his wife had long been gone. He considered dealing with all the authorities and the environmental impact report. He said that's all part of the art. So read it. And I also took the other half of my ADHD brain and went on Google and looked at, while Rabbi was talking, at some of Christo's other installations. But seriously now, we have always heard since childhood of Mount Sinai, You know, there's Sinai 48, there's hot dogs, Mount Sinai, Mount Sinai Hospital. Is the other mountain Mount Horeb? The one where they smashed the tablets? It wasn't Sinai, was it? Rabbi? Where was the first mountain? Which one was it? It was, because it says in there that God Adonai was with them from Horeb. Where was both things happen on Sinai? Am I mistaken?
Is it possible these things are just fungible as opposed to being isolatable and distinct?
Because what I see is, I think that one mountain and one going up and coming down is as important as the next. We have to look at we have to look at the resilience of both parties here. I also wrote down that Moses appears to be one of the original, if not one of the most, he's got to be in the top 10 negotiators and conciliators of all time. I mean, he's dealing with the big kahuna here, and he just says, wait a minute. Let's back this off. Don't kill all of these people now. There must be another way. So I see it as having been a practicing attorney for a long time. I mean, he had both he had all of it. He had the legal arts, he had the spiritual arts, you know, so he was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, Jay, what you've raised is really fascinating, because it got me to thinking this, is that at one moment, Moses is, in a sense, if you want to say, negotiating and mediating with the divine CEO, while Aaron is also engaged in a form of negotiating and mediating with all the masses of people. So that's a very fascinating thing to bring up. Thank you.
And it's interesting that Aaron does not seem, unless I'm mistaken, he does not seem to be tremendously punished for this. I know later on that his two offspring get eaten by the ground. I don't think it had anything to do with this, but he doesn't seem to be reprimanded harshly for having done this.
So one thing we learned from this, if from nowhere else, is we should never be too quick to assume what someone is experiencing as a form of punishment. Sometimes people punish themselves internally far more severely than there's experienced any external form of punishment. But thank you, Jay. And
then one quick comment.
Yeah.
This proves that Adonai always has our back, but you can only see his back.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
You got to think about that one. Okay.
Thank you. And let me invite others who'd like to share something. Richard?
Yes, a couple of things. You know, the artist here is God. And I think of Moses as his helper.
Apprentice? Or?
He's his apprentice. He's his go-to guy. He's his wingman. He's his best boy. And I like him a lot more in this section. He seems more at heart, more heart for him. And I see the process. You know, God created all these people. And it's pointed out that, you know, but God, you turned their hearts wrong. And they're all up against, the Bible says, up against Aaron. Hey, what's with our guy Moses? Do something about this. They're leaning on him. And God has created all these people for this great artwork, and he's having difficulties with it. And two things come out for me. One is that he finally says, okay, I'm going to forgive you your sins, but there's going to be some punishment because there's still some learning how to live properly, and you've got to do that. I'm not going to guilt trip you about the sin anymore, but please pay attention and start writing this on your hearts. And the other thing I wanted to say pertains to this always seeing God's back and being in the cleft. And Rabbi, when you talked about Christo and walking across through Central Park and seeing all these drapes. Well, we always only see the back of God as he moves on across and the green grass grows up behind, and we see the fullness of his glory. And that's what we're trying to learn about and to soften our excitement enough that we can maintain an even course and not go too far to the left or too far to the right. And I see that this process of the greatest artwork ever, which is the creation of the earth and humankind and conscience, that's tough work. And these guys are at work on it. So I give them all an A+.
Anna, would you like to share something?
Yeah, the fact that you chose the fabric art is really interesting. And those in Central Park, they were golden yellow. It wasn't red, remember? It was just beautiful. I got to be there and walk through. Totally amazing, totally transformed that space. So I just want to say that fabric can be really strong. And it's the warp and the woof. And so what we're talking about is like how to get along with each other, how to get along with God, bringing factions together. And maybe you've just kind of unknowingly just put it all right in front of us, because you don't get a big piece of fabric like that without every little string in there doing its part. And they all bend and they all move together.
That's lovely. Thank you, Anna. That's lovely. Okay. And Justin, please share with us. Thank you.
I guess the first piece that was, I guess I've just been wondering about, and if there's any response, I don't know. But I mean, this mention of the incense mixture that also appears where it appears in the Talmud, the incense mixture. So I mean, and I wondered if there's anything around the symbolism of the incense mixture. I was trying to figure out what ingredients are there. I'm just offering, what's going on with that? If there's
one of the things that I just looked up while I was reading this was that the three, what was it? Ankia and what were they? There were three different things that were mixed together. One of them in Hebrew is shechelet, which is, it's a translated fingernail, and it's a little part of a mollusk, which I guess was fairly common. And shechelet is also where you can get that blue coloring, I believe. I think that's a mollusk where we get the blue coloring for the blue thread and the tzitzit. So I just thought that was kind of lovely. The smells of things, which some of those are, the sweet smell of the resin and when you crush the herb and things, but also that there might be a color part in there too.
Nice. That's very nice. So here's what you got me to think about. Eventually, when the temple gets made, and this is true in the Mishkan as well, there is in the center of the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum, the innermost dimension that one can access in this plane where one encounters the presence of God. There are two things, really. One is the ark, which is very material, very heavy. The other is a waft of incense, which is very immaterial, very ephemeral. So here's where I guess we meet God, is where something that is eternal and something that is ephemeral coexist, a place where the material and the immaterial coexist. And that is what it means to be in this dimension as a human being, and to experience and to bring about holiness, to be able to navigate between the material and the immaterial, the time full and the time less. And it's not an easy task to negotiate to all that. But that's what we're called upon to do. And when we're able to balance those two things, when we're able to live with both, then I think we're living a healthy life.
So that's what the instruction about the herbs are, the stacting, the onycha and the galbanum or whatever it is. You compound them, you blend them, you refine them, you beat them, make them into powder, you mix them with oil. It's the action of, it's making, so you're taking something solid and you're creating the incense from it. You're releasing the scent when you smash it up.
Oh, so beautiful. This is so beautiful. Everyone, let me invite Susan. Go ahead and unmute and share with us.
All right, couldn't find it. So I kind of got stuck on early on in the Torah portion. I think it was in chapter 32 where God says, if you don't do it this way, you will be separated from the people. And that is said several times. And it's the first time that, not the first time I've heard it by any means, but it's the first time that it kind of hit me viscerally about these people out in the wilderness by themselves. And so somebody is going to be set off by themselves and separated from their community where they don't know who they are or where they are or where they're going. And so the only thing they have is community, and how really devastating that must be. Shattering, to use your words. And so then I guess I went from there to how we do that in our society today, how we separate people, and how really emotionally shattering it is for them when we do that.
Thank you, Susan. I think that as modern people, we don't really appreciate how devastating it is to be cut off from a group. One didn't really exist as an individual in ancient times. One existed as a member, whether it was of a family, a clan, a tribe. The notion of just saying, okay, I think I'm going to go live in San Francisco now and just do something different. It was an absurd notion. So thank you for reminding us about, this is always about how important it is that to not be coherent with, to not be woven into the fabric of some community is to not exist. It's to disappear from memory, from the face of the earth, if you will. And so this is a community. We learned from this is a great weaving project. And it is all because it is all about one's individual life doesn't exist apart from a collective life, a communal life. And so in that sense, this weaving project is not just about one's personal identity. This weaving project is a communal social project. And it's by necessity because it involves a group. It is public. It's a public art project. So I want to say I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for regularly coming together to engage in this public art project of unleashing our creativity, exploring things together, receiving with gratitude other people's points of view and weaving our own back into it. And we're creating something quite beautiful. I'm so inspired by the work that we all do together. And I'm very grateful. Thank you so much. Everyone, be well. I look forward to our next art project together. Be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You wanted to say something, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Steve, want to
Oh,
say something?
right.
You were David.
Talk about Mount Horeb hot dogs.
David, what were you going to say? I want to hear.
I thought I was
It's
muted.
okay, he could.
I was going to say, Jay, listen, I wouldn't mind trying a Mount Horeb hot dog.
All right, there we go.
And my other thing was that I'd noticed that many, if not all these things that are used in the ointment, like cinnamon, frankincense, myrrh, that I'm aware of, come from far, far away when you're living back in those times. The cinnamon comes all the way from India, which just said to me as it went by, well, they're kind of in the middle of a trading network, you know, crossroads. I don't know,
A
those-
crossroads.
Neither of them struck me
Yes.
as particularly profound, and I was not even a little bit unhappy about not having to say them, but you forced me.
Love you.
Love you all. Okay, be well, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.